So guys, we are back with another FM23 video. Today we are talking money. We are talking all about the budgets of the 20 Premier League clubs in the game. We're going to show you what you have to spend in that first transfer window to all importantly improve your team and hopefully fire them to glory. So without any further ado, let's dive in and take a look, starting with Arsenal. So guys, Arsenal start the saves really nicely. Actually, they have 51 million in their overall balance and they have a transfer budget of 26.2 million, which actually is pretty good. It's also got around 300k in that wage budget as well, so you can actually go out and sign some good players to improve on an already decent squad. Believe it or not, Aston Villa actually have more money to spend than Arsenal in season number 1. They have 30 million of their budget right here, right now for you to spend going into season 1, which maybe Steven Gerrard could have needed, but he has now, alas, been sacked. You also have a little bit of wiggle room in the wage budget, not as much as Arsenal though, and next season's budget will be 26 million. So again, relatively steady for Villa, but hopefully you could do something with that money. I'd like to think 30 million is enough for some of you guys to really strengthen this Villa team. No real surprises, but Bournemouth are struggling. You only have £1 million if you start with Bournemouth. You also have about 30k to work with in that wage budget as well. So it is a bit of a tough one if you are a Bournemouth fan. If you can keep Bournemouth into the Premier League next season, you'll have 22 million as a minimum guaranteed budget though, if you think you're up to the task. Now we have Moneyball Brentford, who have £6.8 million to spend in that first transfer window. The following season would be a minimum guaranteed of £24.6 million, and you've got around 40k a week in the wage budget as well. The overall balance is nice and healthy at 14.5 million, and if a club like Brentford stays in the Premier League long term, that will just snowball and just get more and more and more. So another healthy club in Brentford, even if you can't do stuff in that first transfer window. This one caught me off guard. Next up, we have Brighton, who have £70 million to spend. I don't know where that money's come from. Did Chelsea pay that much for Graham Potter? That is absolutely insane, unless it's the Basuma money and stuff like that, I guess. I don't know if Brighton actually did spend it all in real life. So 70 million, that's the most that we've seen so far. And next season will be a guaranteed 38.55 million as well. The wage budget gives you around, what's that, 190,000 a week. Brighton seem like a very good prospect in FM23. Up next is Chelsea, who obviously do have Graham Potter, but if you were to take control of Chelsea, he would be no more. £13.5 million for Chelsea in that first season. Todd Bowley's going to be ready to splash the cash the next season, though. Minimum of £27.6 million. And you've got a little bit of wiggle room in that wage budget. Again, it's around about £150,000 a week for you to work with. That transfer budget it's okay. It's nothing on Brighton though, is it? And the overall balance of the club in a minus £23 million deficit, maybe steer clear of Chelsea. Now we have my editor's team. Editor Jack is a Crystal Palace fan, and Palace fans, unfortunately, you're going to struggle with that first season transfer budget as well. £1.7 million for you, and again, the guaranteed 24.5 million if you do stay in the Premier League after season number 1. Only around 30k to work with in the wage budget as well. I think the financial restrictions on someone like Crystal Palace is quite difficult. You do have a decent enough squad though to survive in that Premier League to get your hands on that £24.5 million next season. It would appear Frank Lampard has spent all of Everton's money, and if you were to take over at the Toffees, you would only have £2 million to spend. Next season, again, you have that guaranteed minimum, obviously being all that Premier League money, £27.42 million, and you've got around 50k, sorry, in that wage budget. Not looking good for Everton, although the overall balance of the club is much more healthy at around 62.3.4 million. Another one of the newly promoted sides, we have Fulham here. Now they have 7.4 million to spend in the summer transfer window to add players into the likes of Mitrovic, etc., which is actually quite nice compared to some of the other clubs that we have seen, Palace and Bournemouth really ringing out with around the under £2 million mark. So Fulham actually doing pretty darn good here. The overall balance of the club is okay at around 4.2 million, and you've got a little bit to work with. It's around 95k a week in that wage budget. If you were to keep Fulham in the Premier League again next season, £23 million would be yours to move things forward. Jesse Marsch, the new manager at Leeds, would love having an extra 25 million quid to spend. Leeds have actually strengthened in some really nice areas, but obviously did lose Rafinha and stuff, Calvin Phillips, to big transfer value. So there is still some money to spend at Leeds United. 25 million in that first season. The overall balance of the club is around 40 million as well, and you've got a nice little bit of wiggle room, around 80k a week in that wage budget. Next season would guarantee you 27 million pounds as well as a minimum, so I think Leeds is quite a nice save to start your beta with. Leicester City. Wow, do this club need some rejuvenation. There's only 10 million quid for you to do so if you were to supersede Brendan Rodgers. The overall balance of the club, 76 million pounds, is one of the highest that we have seen thus far, but for some reason the money's just not finding its way back out onto the pitch. Obviously they've lost a lot of players. I'm thinking you're probably going to need at least a goalkeeper, probably another centre back. 10 million quid's going to be quite tight for you to do that. Hopefully you can do something if you were to take over at Leicester next season. Again, that minimum in and around the 25 million quid mark. Having narrowly missed out on a quadruple last season, Liverpool have 42 million pounds in the bank ready for you to go and spend as a transfer budget, which is really nice. I think this squad could do with that one extra player. Obviously they did sign Darwin Núñez. Luis Diaz came in the January, so you get to add to that as a manager to them in FM23. 42 million, as I did mention. The overall balance of the club is massive, 166 million. The club's doing absolutely brilliantly from that perspective. The wage budget as well, you've got around 250k to work with as well to build on what is a very overpowered squad, if I do say so myself, in my experience in FM23. Next season the minimum guarantee would be around 50 million as well, so this club's banking on that Champions League revenue hitting their bank. So I get told and I hear that the Glazers don't put money into the club. Well, I'm not going to start that debate here because obviously this is a video game. I don't want to start that debate here. The overall balance of the club in Football Manager is really nice, 132.9 million pounds. You get 20.6 million in that first season to add on the already good additions of Anthony, Malacia, I'm trying to think, Casemiro, the other players, some of the other players that Manchester United have brought in during this window. The squad's pretty good, and I think 20.6 million is a decent amount for you to add into it. You've got a nice little bit of wiggle room. So almost 500k actually in that wage budget. 500k a week, that can buy you a lot. And then the transfer budget for next season would be a guaranteed minimum of 65 million pounds. So it looks like the investment is going to continue at Manchester United. This one's silly. It's Man City. They've got loads of money. Who is surprised? Not me. You have a transfer budget, if you were to start in Man City, of 102 million quid. Next season would guarantee you a minimum spend of 83 million as well. 500k in the wage budget per week. You can go out and basically sign whoever you want at the moment, guys. 133 million in the overall bank balance as well. As I said, this is Manchester City. You know the money is just going to keep coming and coming and coming. And you've already got Erling Haaland. I mean, I don't know who I'd spend 100 million on to improve this squad. Let me know down in the comments who you would spend that money on. Another big spender in the world of football could be Newcastle United. If you were to take over Newcastle in season 1, you've got 40 million quid to work with. The overall balance again is massive, 151 in the overall club balance, and that 40 million is really good to put some extra investment into this Newcastle side. Eddie Howe's done a really good job of piecing things together, but with 40 million quid you can really impact things and maybe add in that squad depth that Newcastle are potentially lacking right now. You have a nice 500k almost in the wage budget as well, so again you really have that ability to add a high tier caliber player to an already okay squad. Maybe I'd spend that on squad depth. They've signed every single player under the sun, it would appear, in the summer transfer window, so newly promoted Nottingham Forest don't have a huge amount of cash to go, but obviously they have one of the newest squads in the Premier League. 1.5 million pounds in this season 1 window. The overall balance of the club is slightly less than that actually, 1.3 million quid. The wage budget is pretty high for a club that has just been promoted out of the playoffs in the Championship, but hopefully you can use the new pieces that have already been acquired in Football Manager, and next season if you were to stay in the Premier League you'd have that minimum guaranteed money of around 22 million quid. Southampton are up next, and if you were to replace 𝘼𝙗𝙗𝙪𝙩 𝙈𝙚, you would have 20 million to impact your team at Southampton. So I actually quite like Southampton as a club. I think they produce some excellent youngsters, but obviously 20 million quid in FM instalments and all of that good stuff. I think you can make some good stuff happen with 20 million pounds. We've got around 100k in the wage budget as well. Next season, guaranteed minimum of around 26 million pounds, and obviously the overall balance of the club is in the positive as well, which obviously really does help, doesn't it? On to Tottenham, another club that have a really healthy overall balance. The overall balance at the club is 162.5 million pounds, looking at them in Football Manager. Transfer budget in season 1 in that summer transfer window before you start things is 26.4 million quid, which is really nice. 40 million guaranteed next year. You've got around 200,000 pounds in that wage budget as well. Obviously they've added players like 𝘼𝙗𝙗𝙪𝙩, and you've got one of the best front lines in the Premier League in Harry Kane, 𝘼𝙗𝙗𝙪𝙩, Kulusevski and Richarlison. I like Tottenham. 26.4 million pounds is a decent amount of money to spend, but I don't actually know where I'd spend it with Spurs. The penultimate club is West Ham on this list. 3.9 million pounds in season 1 to kick things off, 43.4 million in that overall balance, and around 100,000 in the overall wage budget as well. So again, a little bit of flexibility from David Sullivan and co if you were to take over from David Moyes. I actually quite like West Ham squad as it is, to be perfectly honest. I mean, let me know down in the comments what you think you would actually improve to it. But 3.9 million pounds, it's not going to be brilliant. It's not going to be a flash signing like a Haaland, for instance. But I think you could add something to it with that money. And last but by no means least, we have Wolves, who have 3.9 million pounds to kick things off in season number 1. Not really a great deal of flexibility in that wage budget. You've got around 50k to work with a week, and then the overall balance of the club is just over 8 million pounds, and they need a striker, don't they, Wolves? So hopefully you can go out and find the next Benjamin Sesko, the next Lorenzo Luca, someone like that to bring into your team for FM23 and hopefully fire you to glory, because I think that's kind of what Wolves are really missing at the moment. So that is the list of the 20 budgets to kick things off in FM23 currently in the beta. I don't know if this will maybe change for the main game when that does come out on the 8th of November, but there you have it, guys. You have the information, you have the power. Let me know down in the comment section who you're going to start your first save with, and if you want to carry on understanding a little bit more about the world of FM, for instance, why my badges look like that, check out this video here and I'll show you how to install those logo packs.